a company that started as a clean energy dream. BluSmart, the electric ride-hailing startup that promised to disrupt the future of mobility, but the wheels are now coming off. BluSmart is reportedly exiting its core business and shifting from building a platform to simplify supplying cars for rival Uber. But the real shock lies beneath the surface. We're talking about the EV loans worth nearly 1,000 crore rupees meant to electrify India's roads were instead rerouted through shell firms and layered transactions. This is to the purchase of 42.9 crore luxury flat at the Camellias. Now over 260 crore remains unaccounted for, and that's not all. Well, 26 lakhs for a golf set, nearly 3 crores to a spouse, and over 6 crore rupees to their mother, what was meant to power electric cars, now powering elite lifestyles. And to know more on this, we have my colleague Tushar joining us. Take us through the details in regard to the action that SEBI has taken against the company, but what will happen to its promoters?
So essentially what we know so far, Divya, is that SEBI has barred Gensol Engineering, Anmol Jaggi and Puneet Jaggi, the promoters of the company, from accessing the securities market for a purported financial fraud that amounted to siphoning of public money for private gains, as you rightly mentioned in your opening remarks. So essentially, the direct fallout of it has been BluSmart, because Anmol Jaggi is the co-founder of both Gensol Engineering as well as BluSmart. Remember, apart from the EPC business, the engineering, procurement and construction business of Gensol was also an EV leasing company which bought cabs and then leased out to companies. BluSmart, because of its associations, was one of the primary beneficiaries at favorable lease terms. Now, with Gensol going away, BluSmart's future looks uncertain, and that can be immediately felt given that BluSmart has already announced that it's suspending its operations at the Delhi airport until a future time. We also tried to book cabs in Bangalore locally, as well as airport rides. That was also not possible. As well as in Mumbai, the airport rides are now suspended. So essentially, the problem that has happened at Gensol is now reflecting in full in BluSmart's operations.
Tushar, of course, this is very shocking news coming in regard to this. Of course, now, as you mentioned, BluSmart is planning to exit its core cab business and shift to operating as a fleet partner of its rival company, and that is Uber. So basically, all the cabs that BluSmart perhaps owned is now going to be, resold to perhaps Uber, and that is perhaps the plan of the company.
So essentially, the you see behind me is actually an Uber cab. We are at an EV charging station in Mumbai. Now, what will happen, as what we know so far, as reports are suggesting, is that all of these BluSmart cabs will be leased out to Uber. Now, how that pans out, we have to remember how the deals of contours of these deals will be. We don't know at this point of time. But in the past, both BluSmart and Uber had joined hands. At that point of time, BluSmart cabs were registered on the Uber app. Both BluSmart as well as Uber took a cut from the fare that was charged to customers. We don't know the new contours of the deal now that Gensol is in trouble and the troubles that BluSmart has faced. So while what Uber does here on, we just have to wait and watch.
Right, of course, Tushar, also break it down for us. How did BluSmart position itself, and by supplying cabs that were very clean, the drivers were very, very good. It was very punctual. Take us through, how did it establish itself in a very short amount of time? The exponential rise that we've seen as far as BluSmart is concerned in perhaps in less than 2 years. Take us through what set them apart.
So BluSmart started its operations in 2018 from Bangalore, setting itself apart from the likes of Ola and Uber by offering EV-only cabs. The conversations that we have had with customers, and we have also experienced ourselves, is that the service was prompt, the cars were clean, and there were no waiting times or surge times as far as the vehicle was concerned. Customers also went out of the way to actually point it out that asking for an AC was not a concern in a BluSmart's cab as what they may have faced in an Ola or Uber cab in Bangalore. So the customer experience was very good. No complaints from customers as such. The service was prompt in all the airport rides in Delhi, Bangalore and Mumbai. But again, these problems have surfaced, and basically Gensol's problems are now reflecting in what was a good operationally functional company in BluSmart.
Right, Tushar, thank you so much for joining us with all those details. We also have Nilansh Kabra, Credit CEO, joining us in order to know more on this. When we talk about these startups, that seem to be selling a dream that looks very glitzy, but there are these high-profile startups that are crashing. What is causing this crash, and what kind of checks and balances really need to be put in place?
Hi. So primarily the cause of these crashes, especially with these trailblazing startups, is the fact that they chase super fast growth, whereas there is no accountability for the funds that are being used. There is no accountability for the way the founders are managing the company and the assets. So the only solution to this would be to have regular independent audits, a very strong compliance check team, and multiple levels of approval for the use of funds, to ensure that even these startups which promise super fast growth or promise or trying to achieve something which requires a heavy use of funds, it is ensured that those funds are used for the right purpose and they're not used to fund the founders or their own personal interests.
Right. Of course, let's, talk about that. This really shows the true picture behind the pretty picture. We're talking about good cars in comparison to, say, other Uber, Ola cars, perhaps. Talking about their punctuality, talking about there were no cancellations, how clean and good the cars, they were maintained very, very well. But take us through what is the true picture that really lies behind this pretty picture. Are we, when we look at too good to be true startups, do we need to be very cautious?
Yeah, I honestly personally would be. If there are some startups which look too good to be true, coming from a founder's perspective, at times when we see profits or when we see a lot of growth happening, that does go into our heads. So to ensure that, such things which are happening external to us do not affect us internally and do not affect our operations, we need to be very, very precise as to how the company operates, especially when it's at scale. When we are managing thousands of cars, managing crores of money, it has to be done in a specific manner. When companies reach a certain scale, especially if they're borrowing public money, public funds, there needs to be heavy accounting, heavy compliances, and it needs to be ensured that the purpose of the funds is exactly what it was used for. Not just the purpose, but also how it was used. There needs to be public notifications, there needs to be compliance checks, regular third-party audits by independent companies which are specializing in ensuring fraud and compliance. And with these too good to be true companies, I feel it is necessary.
Right, of course, this too good to be true startups often crash and burn. How realistic should their approach really be, and what kind of model should they be emulating?
I feel that most of these startups which look too good to be true try to achieve really high targets in a very short span of time. Lenders or investors, when they put money into such companies, need to ensure that the funds are either given in tranches to ensure that the funds are exactly used for what they were given for, and then the next tranche is given. And then the public needs to keep a cautious eye on them, especially if they're investors in Gensol or other such private public companies, and even their users or interested with these private companies. They need to ensure that the founders are doing what they were used, what the money was used for. And similarly, the founders need to have a very clean oversight on what is happening in their company. I mean, Anmol Jaggi did something, but the other founders also should have known about this. So it is not just that the people have to be ensured, the lender. It comes from both sides. It's a twofold problem. It's both the investors or the lenders issue and also the founders issue on their side, that they use the siphon of the money, and then the investors or the lenders do not get a whiff of it.
Absolutely. And Nilansh Kabra, of course, this case highlights growing concerns about corporate governance in India's startup ecosystem, where rapid growth has often outpaced regulatory compliance. Thank you for joining us on the broadcast.